Hi, in this video, we are discussing the 16th numerical from the exercise for the chapter Units and Measurements, which is the first chapter for 11th standard physics. Now, question में हमें एक formula दिया है that is of a physical quantity, and this physical quantity is represented as capital letter X. And the formula for this quantity goes like this, where X is equal to A raised to 4 into B raised to 3 the whole divided by c raised to 1 by 3 and d raised to 1 by 2, where a, b, and c and d are some physical quantities जिसके बारे में हमें अब तक information नहीं है. Now, इन quantities के जब हम measurements करते हैं तो we find certain percentage error associated with those measurements. To be specific, quantity A में हमें percentage error मिलता है of 2%. When we measure quantity B, we get a percentage error of 3%. Quantity C के measurement में percentage error is 3% as well. And quantity D के measurement में percentage error involved is 4%. And now using these formulas and all these percentage errors, we are expected to calculate the percentage error for our physical quantity X. So question देखते ही आप बता सकते हो कि it will use the concepts of combinations of errors. एंड इसी के साथ हमने जो है क्वेश्चन का डिस्कशन कंप्लीट कर लिया है. नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द सॉल्यूशन ऑफ दिस प्रीटी स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड क्वेश्चन. सो सबसे पहले हम लिखेंगे द गिवन स्टेटमेंट एंड उसमें हम मेंशन करेंगे सारे क्वांटिटीज जो हमें क्वेश्चन में गिवन है. सो द फर्स्ट क्वांटिटी जो हमें गिवन है क्वेश्चन में is the expression for x, that is x is equal to a raised to 4 b raised to 3 the whole divided by c raised to 1 by 3 into d raised to 1 by 2. So this is the given equation. इसके अलावा हमें जो है कुछ क्वांटिटीज के परसेंटेज एरर्स दिए गए हैं. सो हम उसे टेबल फॉर्म में रिप्रेजेंट करेंगे. सो आवर फर्स्ट रो रिप्रेजेंट्स क्वांटिटीज and our second row represents percentage errors in those quantities. So column 1 में will represent quantity A जिसके साथ associated है percentage error that is 2%. So quantity A की calculation में percentage error is 2%. For quantity B the error is 3%. For quantity C the error is 3% as well. And finally D के measurement में the percentage error is 4%. इसके अलावा और कुछ information question में नहीं दिया है. So now let's move on to our next section, that is the to find section. And हमने जो है पहले ही हमारा जो to find का quantity था उसे express कर लिया है. So अगर हम question में देखेंगे, we have to calculate percentage error in x. So in to find section we'll write we want to calculate only one quantity, that is the percentage error in quantity x, capital X. Now, let us discuss what sort of formulas we can use to calculate this percentage error in X in our formula section. So I'll quickly prepare our formula section and let's discuss all the formulas. Now, before we solve the formulas, हमारा end task is to calculate the percentage error in X. So let's try to understand what sort of formula से हमको percentage error calculate कर सकते हैं. So percentage error in percentage error in X is equal to, as per the formula, it is given to us as relative error in X, जिसको हम represent करते हैं as, we represent the relative error as delta X upon X and this multiplied by 100. So that is how we calculate percentage error. We multiply relative error into 100. So before we can calculate percentage error, we need to make sure कि हमें relative error पता हो. But given में हमें कोई भी information नहीं है of relative errors, so we need to now figure out a way to calculate this relative error as well. Now, as per the definition of relative error, अगर मुझे relative error in x ढूंढना होगा, that is delta x upon x, तो मुझे जो है x का पहले फॉर्मूला देखना होगा कि x में errors किन किन quantities के वजह से introduce हो सकते हैं. So जो x का formula as per the given था, that is a raised to 4 into b raised to 3 the whole divided by c raised to 1 by 3 into d raised to 1 by 4. Now x is dependent on quantity a, b, c and d. and all of these quantities have some or the other errors associated with this. इनके measurements में कुछ ना कुछ errors है. तो जब हमारा इनपुट या गिवन क्वांटिटीज में ही एरर होगा, तो हमारा जो डिराइव्ड क्वांटिटी है, दैट इज एक्स इन दिस केस, विल ऑल्सो हैव एरर्स बिकॉज ऑफ दीज क्वांटिटीज जो पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे हैं उनके कैलकुलेशन में. सो हमको जो है हमारा जो रिलेटिव एरर इन एक्स, सो विल बी अ रिजल्टेंट ऑफ रिलेटिव एरर्स बिकॉज ऑफ ऑल दिस क्वांटिटीज. सो सबसे पहले एक्स में ए जो रिलेटिव एरर इंट्रोड्यूस करेगा, दैट इज गिवन टू अस एज ए का जो पावर है, दैट इज 4 into the relative error for A, so which is represented as delta A upon A. This is relative error in A. So I'll write it as well. Relative error in A. Similarly, हमारे X में जो है B भी, since B के अंदर भी कुछ error है, it will also introduce some relative error. And वो relative error का effect is the power of B, that is 3 into the relative error of B, which is delta B upon B. So this is our relative error in B. ठीक है. Similarly, अगर मैं ये trend follow करूँगा, so relative error introduced because of quantity C would be power of C, that is 1 by 3 into the relative error of C, that is delta C by C. And relative error introduced by D, let me just make it a small correction. It is not 1 D raised to 1 by 4, but rather D raised to 1 by 2. So यहाँ पर जो है relative error introduced by D would be power of D into relative error of D, जो कि है delta D upon small d. So this is the formula for calculating the relative error in X. Now problem being कि relative error x के अंदर ढूंढने के लिए first we are required to understand or know the relative error in A, B, C and D, because हमारे given में relative errors नहीं दिया गया है, हमें percentage errors दिया गया है. So now we need to figure out a way to calculate relative errors for each of these quantities using their percentage errors. And by definition, अगर हम formula use करें, so relative error of a quantity, if we have to calculate using percentage error, then it is equal to percentage error divided by the term 100. So अगर हम इन सारे quantities के percentage errors को अगर 100 से divide कर देंगे, तो हमें इनके relative errors मिल जाएंगे. And if we substitute those relative errors in this equation, we'll get the relative error for our quantity X. And then we use that relative error to calculate the percentage error in X. So with this, हमारा जो है सारे formulas and flow of numerical अब decide हो गया है. Now all that's left to do is to solve the actual numerical. So हम हमारा solution का section बनाएंगे quickly and इसके अंदर हम हमारा numerical solve कर देंगे. So I can say from formula 1. So formula 1 say I'll get the relative errors for each of the quantities. Now the relative error for quantity A represented by delta A upon A is equal to the percentage error in A, which is 2 divided by 100. ठीक है. So this is given to us as 0.02. Similarly, relative error in quantity B is given as delta B upon B is 3 upon 100, which is given as 0.03. Relative error for quantity C represented by delta C upon C would be 3 upon 100 as well, because percentage error is 3%, so it is 0.03. And finally, the relative error for quantity D will be delta D upon D, that is 4 upon 100 this time, which is 0.04. So we have calculated the relative errors for each of the quantities, and now we'll substitute these values into our second formula to calculate the relative errors for X. So I can say, so I can say from formula 2, which gives us the relative error in X. So delta X upon X is equal to 4 into the relative error of A, which was calculated to be 0.02. So 0.02 plus 3 into the relative error of B, that is 0.03, plus 1 by 3 into the relative error of C, that is 0.03 as well, plus 1 by 2 into the relative error of quantity D, that is 0.04. So what we have done, we have simply substituted the values of relative errors of each quantities into the formula second. And now if we were to solve this further, 4 into 0.02 becomes 0.08, plus 3 into 0.03 becomes 0.09, plus 1 by 3 into 0.03 becomes 0.01, plus 1 by half into 0.04 becomes 0.02. And if we were to add all this, we would get 0.20. That is the relative error in X. Now that we have calculated the relative error in X, we can calculate our percentage error for X by simply substituting the value of relative error in the formula number 3. So I can say from formula 3, we get the value of percentage error. So percent, okay, let me use the different ink. Percentage error in X is equal to relative error in X, that is delta X, which we have just calculated as 0.20 into 100. So we get therefore the percentage error in X will be 0.2 into 100, that is 20%. And with this, we are done. This was the final value which we were required to calculate in this numerical. If that is the percentage error in X, which is 20%. If you want the PDF of the solution, do check out the description. With this, I hope it helped you. Thank you.